I just get straight to the point. I don't really like this album, man. I don't know, man. I really like Stormzy as a guy, but I think he doesn't really have too much of like a musical air, and his music sounds quite manufactured, right? It's like he has in mind, the people he wants to target, with his music, and then he creates music specifically for those people. And with that, it's really difficult for me to connect, with his music, because it just feels like he doesn't go in deep enough, with the narratives in which he's trying to tackle. I appreciate the concept of like duality with the gang signs and prayer, the negative, the positive, etc. But I just think that it was quite cliche as far as, the narrative, and it wasn't really helped by a lack of musical execution, So I'm not even on the drink tonight. I'm actually on the water. But I think out of 5, I will give the album. I'll give it a 2 out of 5. That's probably been the lowest rating I think I've given an album. But I just want to caveat that with I really like Stormzy as a guy.
I feel like Jordan was personally attacking me. I don't know why.
Firstly, give a rating out of 5 on the album.
I'm gonna go with a 4.4. 4.4. Wow. So this, to me, this album came out in 2017, and I think it was arguably like the first ever expertly executed conceptual album from a UK rap artist. Like, I think the essence of Gang Signs and Prayer is more than just, like gang signs and prayer. If you look at the track list, it's literally gang signs and prayer, gang signs and prayer, gang signs and prayer throughout the whole entire album. And to me, people have tried and failed to do concept albums since. Like Dave, a lot of his albums, the 2 of his albums, have been kind of rooted in this idea of having an underbelly of a concept, and the execution hasn't been quite there. I'm gonna start looking at you, Keith. The execution hasn't been quite there, and with this, you've got songs on it where they were playing some of the songs on the album in church. And then after the church song, you've got, what's the tune? Skengman. Not Big for Your Boots comes after that.
I think it's
Mr. Skeng, yeah, Mr. Skeng comes after it. Straight in. Like, the highs and lows of this album, to me, is just, like, phenomenally executed. Jordan made some good points, which I kind of understand in terms of the engineering element and the manufactured element. I think Stormzy, funnily enough, as Crazy Titch said, is literally the chosen one. Like, to me, the whole industry was behind him with everything he's done from pretty much the get-go. And whether you think that's manufactured or because of his talent, that's opinion-based. But I think the album itself, every single song, to me, at the time I first listened to it, were unskippable. And I couldn't go into the album and just play song 6 because I liked it. I had to start from the beginning. And I don't think there are that many UK albums that you can do that. Listening back, though, like 6 years on, I think maybe the first half is a lot better than the second half. But you just have songs like Bad Boys, like J Hus and Gets literally Gang Signs and Prayer in one song. Like where Stormzy saying you're not bad, and then Gets comes in and says, 14 holding my shank in a mirror. Like it's you know, this to me, when you look back on 2017, sums up my own personal kind of emotions of, you know, like anger and peace, which I think we all have in ourselves, in our innate nature. So I think that's probably why I hold it quite in high regard.
Cool.
I'm not gonna give it such a high rating. For me, it's definitely not a 4.4 in my opinion. It's probably around maybe the 3.3 mark. I agree pretty much wholeheartedly with everything you said, Jordan. I'm not gonna lie. It is to me very like manufactured, and whilst I appreciate him and what he brings in terms of like for us in the kind of like music industry and like how big a star he is and everything he needs to do, it does give the feeling of, is this catered to me? And I always refer to Jay Huss and Dave as being like, they make music which is like catered to people like me, whereas I feel like this is catered to a certain market. It feels very like, as in the industry have said, make an album, you need to cater to someone from Bognor Regis, and just like give them something kind of catchy for them to, you know, to go off on. There are a lot of songs on it I do like. There are a lot of songs I'm just like, I know what you're trying to do with this, but I don't really like connect with it, and that's kind of my difficulty with the particular album. I feel like on the conceptual album, Speak from before, I really think that someone like Gets on Conflict of Interest has done it to, in my opinion, a very, very good standard way. It doesn't seem like he's like pandering or like catering. He's given us him in his way, and it's like for us, like kind of thing. And I don't really get that with this particular album. Again, I love Stormzy as a human being. I think he's an amazing, like, you know, star in that sense, but the music itself doesn't really capture me like that. Yeah, it's an okay album, man. It's alright. It's cute.
I'd give this a 3 out of 5, and I feel like I'm maybe being a little bit generous. I'm not going to do what everyone does with Stormzy, where you qualify your criticism by saying he's a nice guy, but right. But I feel like everyone does that with Stormzy. What I will say is, at the time I heard this album, I didn't connect with it. Still don't connect with it. I do feel like it does feel manufactured. I actually liken Stormzy to Anthony Joshua. He feels like the AJ of music, in that the whole industry is just behind him. They've just said, you're the one, whatever you do, we're going to get behind it, whether it's good or bad. If you think of AJ, he's not technically the best boxer, but he is still a very good boxer.
And he's marketable.
We show up for his events, we cheer for him, he's lovable, he's likable. Your point about his music being manufactured, I do get why you say that, but I'm actually going to say I like the fact that he's done that, because so many UK artists try and be real, try and be these US hip-hop street rappers, and their music just comes off really boring. He knows he has a broad appeal, and he is actually trying to appeal to as much people as possible, and I think we got to rate the bravery behind that. We are so attached to people making music for us, or music being real, or for the culture. Sometimes you got to applaud people who are playing a bigger position, and I feel like he has taken that position on. I just want to throw in as well, if anyone's heard his last album, I connected with his last album a lot more, and that's a little bit more one-dimensional. It's a bit more narrow in terms of, it's got a softer feel to it, and I've felt that a bit more. But yeah, solid 3 out of 5 for me.
Cool, nice one.
I kind of don't really get Stormzy. I mean, Liam was kind of just discussing this a bit earlier, and I think there's a very good comparison you made to the AJ sort of. I kind of like don't understand why Stormzy, I don't want to say is the guy or is where he is, but I was discussing with Liam earlier, like, is his music that different from anybody else in the grime scene or the rap scene? I wouldn't say not really. He doesn't particularly stand out more than anyone else. So I don't get why he is like regarded as the savior. And again, I think it's like you said, I think the industry is more behind Stormzy. But to me, it's like it doesn't necessarily connect. And I'll caveat by saying, I like Stormzy. He's good. He's the image. He says all his P's and Q's correctly. But, you know, I would say that he is, in terms of all of the other grime spitters, he can rank amongst them. You know, when I listen to this album, Stormzy does the two things. He does the gang signs and he does the prayer. And it's like, yeah, he's got the skippy, bubbly flow. He's good at doing that sort of flow. But when I think about when he raps, is there anything particularly that stands out to me when he spits his lyrics? I wouldn't say there really is. Like, I think about the difference, like, Jay-Z recently did the God Did verse, and everybody's got a quotable, when he said this, and when he said that, and when he said, but when I hear Stormzy, you're really just into the monotony of the bounce, really. It's just and everybody in the back of the video is just giving it this. It's like, but is he really saying anything that particularly stands out, that's really meaningful, impactful? Not really to me. It's a bit like fast food. It's got all the flashy, the lights and the bubbling and then excitement, but is there anything really deep that I'm really taking from it? Not really. And then when we go to like the prayer side of it, can Stormzy sing? No. He can't sing. But the only reason we're tolerating it is because he does the skibbity, biggity flow. So like if Stormzy wasn't rapping, would you tolerate that singing from an artist? I don't think most people would. But it's only because we like Stormzy. It's coupled with the bouncy flow. It's who he is. Like, it's a bit. It's like I'm not seeing where the thing is to grasp onto that. I say this thing here is exceptionally stand out. That makes him in the position that he is. He's a good artist, but I wouldn't say he's exceptional for how he's regarded and rated within the industry. I'd say that.
Wow. Idris.
Hi. So for this album, I was listening to it on my way here, and I realized that I like it more than most people, but I understand why the argument for it to be rated, I guess, medium. So my rating is actually like 3.2, and I think it's primarily because I get the manufacturing side of him, and I get as well why you mentioned it's almost good for him to have that manufacturing aspect of it, because other artists, they try to be hardcore grime, but it doesn't break out of their postcode, and it's not for a culture has to survive long enough to be passed down to the next generation. And I think if everyone wants to keep it kind of local, it's not really going to transcend. So I think Stormzy does a good job in broadening the scope of grime, so that when you go in and you kind of like do your research, if you're passionate enough, you can then find the smaller artists. This album alone, I feel like there's a lot of bangers on the album that I personally like, and I wouldn't call them, like the singing part, I fully agree with you. I feel like every time, this last album, I was not liking it because of the amount of singing, and I feel like if he was to invest more into, when he came out with the 10-minute song, the song about black culture, Mel
made me do it.
If he had like 10 songs of that, I would respect him a lot more in terms of his griminess, I guess. Or because I think the reason why Stormzy is so prominent is because of how he moves within the industry, not necessarily because of his talent, but he is very smart and he's very like business clued up, and that's a good thing. I want more artists to kind of follow within his footsteps in terms of being business minded, look after your image, don't be doing stupid stuff on the internet and get caught up. But if we could get a combination of the talent of J Hus and the marketability of Stormzy, that would be incredible. Like, Dave comes close, but Dave also has a lot of misses when it comes to the delivery of his art. But these three, I think if we can get like the attributes of each of them and just merge them into one artist, man, it would be incredible.
Yeah, for real.
I said I wasn't going to speak, but now I feel like I have to speak. I just kind of want to go back to what you were saying about Stormzy as a person. You're kind of saying like you don't really get him. But I think the difference between Stormzy and a Dave and a J Hus and whoever is actually that it's just not all about the music. Like, for example, he goes on stage and shout and like calls out the Daily Mail, talks about Grenfell, talks about all these things that no one else is talking about. And I feel like he understands that his purpose is not just about music. So I think we can talk about his talent. I mean, I think he's greatly talented, but and I think, did you watch the documentary of Louis Theroux? Yeah. I think he talks more about his purpose, and you know, it's quite visible in like how he's come into God, and you know that was there from Gang Signs and Prayers as well. But I just think that you can even see it in the ventures that he does. You know, he's not just business minded. It's like he's doing things like Murky Books because he cares about education. He's doing all these initiatives because they're things that he cares about, and they're things that he knows that his community that he grew up with, that he identifies with, needs that. You know, he said in the documentary, like, I'm black and I care about black things. And I think like that's something that sets him apart from other people, because yeah, it's true, Dave was on the Brits or whatever, kind of doing a similar thing, but Stormzy follows up in what he's doing. And that's why I can put aside, you know, you're way too big for your boots. And like,
I actually really like
do you
that
know what I
song.
mean? Like, no, I like it,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
don't like, I mean, that's why you can kind of put aside like the hibbity hobbity, like whatever it is you feel that you feel that you do or don't like. Because when I see someone like Storm, like I feel like he's my brother. I honestly feel like passionate in my defense of him, because I'm like, your purpose is beyond this, and that is why you connect with the Jay-Z's of the world. That is why people are talking about you and respecting you. That is why you're literally like a national treasure. And I love Stormzy.
But sorry, just to touch on that though, like, but don't you think like we're stepping into like murky territory when it kind of comes to evaluating that one's musical output, if their musical output is second fiddle to you know, their overall brand perception?
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, but then I also feel like, do you just have one purpose in life? Like, is it just one talent that you have? Maybe your sub-talent is what gets you there to where you need to be, but actually your purpose and your talent and what you're meant to do is bigger than that. And I think Stormzy's realised that. I don't expect him to sit there and say, oh yeah, you know, like he probably thinks he's super talented, and I think he's super talented, but at the same time, I just think that it's just like with everyone, when people, you know, you're like, oh, why are they doing that now? You know, why is so-and-so releasing that album now? For years, they were just doing this. But when you have worked to that level and you're respected to that point, you can then do the things that you want to do, and your purpose just becomes so much bigger than that. And I don't think we should disregard how we feel about, like, I mean, I personally don't love his most recent album, but I just respect what he's doing. And I think that without Gang Signs and Prayers, he wouldn't have, I think this was like the defining moment for him. Like it really put him there, you know, bringing grime to commercialization.
Okay, thank you
So
for that.
4.7 out of 5.
Oh, 4.7. Right, you said you sneaked that one in.
I'd give the album at least a 4.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite UK tapes from a popular grime / rap act, particularly grime, I'd say, ever. Like, I think for me, it sits alongside Boy in the Corner, Home Sweet Home.
Boy in the Corner.
Yeah. Like, I know it sits as a fairly controversial opinion. But I've sort of maintained that since I heard it in 2017. I felt as though it was an instant classic. I still feel like it is. And like, I also quite passionately disagree with the manufactured argument. I feel like the only cut on the tape that feels kind of programmed for mainstream attention is Big for Your Boots. Obviously there are, you know, when creating an album in the music business, in the music industry, you're gonna have to fine-tune elements of any piece of work to make sure that it's marketable and that it reaches the masses. But I think actually if you go through the library of the album, what I feel is conceived as or perceived to be manufactured, I feel is actually very authentic. Like, and another controversial take is that I feel like as though the body language of the album is actually very similar to that of College Dropout from Kanye West. That's not to say that I feel like the album is equitable to it, but you know, 100 bags is the equivalent of like Dear Mama or a Family's Business or Blinded by Your Grace feels to me like a like a Jesus Walks. And you can probably tell that there is inspiration taken from Kanye, but it, like, I spent a little bit of time in Croydon as a kid, and I don't know if anybody's from around there, but like there's a church that we used to go to regularly in West Norwood called Trinity Baptist, TBC, and this album to me feels like that. Like you're with some real criminals in the church, singing their heart out, singing "Blinded by Your Grace," like that. Like we go to church and we sing our hearts out, and you see those people. Like what we were seeing a couple. Gang signs and prayer, innit? I don't know if this is still working.
Hello?
Oh shit.
Hello? Cool.
Hello.
Apologies for that.
Hello? Is it? But I guess the point is, to me, it I downloaded it as authentic because it felt relevant to my experiences growing up in Croydon around people who straight out after church, they're straight in a whip to go do whatever they're going to do after singing their heart out to the Lord. And, you know, like, I think that there are some really, really nice, like, a lot of people are very critical of Stormzy first musically, I guess, in terms of like musical execution. I think as a grime cut, like I think some of the takes and the cuts are amazing. I feel like the beats on Return of the Rucksack, on Mr. Skeng, are like very novel for grime as a genre. I feel like the introduction of a lot of personal takes, his relationship with his father, being stabbed on his road, the impact that has on his mum, like his, you know, going to, you know, being taken to a police station and your mum having to take you out of those circumstances. There are obviously some cuts on the album that I've never been a fan of Cigarettes and Kush. I feel like it's meant to be a lazy Sunday song with your missus blazing, but it just comes across as a lazy cut. But actually, like, to me, so many moments on the album just feel so distinctly iconic. Like, I think Shut Up is a iconic UK moment. And like, you know, there was a tip of the hat to Crazy Titch. Obviously Crazy Titch jumped on that beat back in the early 2000s and kind of ordained the song prior to it going on. And yeah, I feel like I can listen to that album again and again and be reminded of how I felt in 2017, and in 5-10 years time feel a similar way. And I've actually never felt as pleased with a Stormzy body of work since then. I've never felt that he's really lived up to that. By no means is this a perfect piece of work, and you know, Stormzy is never gonna be seen as having the lyrical dexterity of a Getz or being as interesting maybe as J Hus. But what he does, I think he does probably better than anybody else. He's very clear in what he wants to say. He can flow, and he picks interesting topics and presents them in interesting ways. And for a grime cut, I think it's amongst the best. So, yeah, for me, it's a 4. Big up Stormzy, and yeah, I'm saddened to hear that so many people are not really rating it.
Yeah, salute. Here we go. We got this lady here.
I really like the album. I don't really have a rating for it, but I really like it. When it came out, I think I was like 16. So like, I'll say when I was 16, I wasn't very knowledgeable on music. But when I listen to music, I'm listening to someone's story. And it's kind of like, when I'm listening to Stormzy, even if you don't really know like what he's about, his album told a story. It's kind of like, I've done bad things, but I'm changing. That I don't know how to say it, but he was explaining himself through his music. And like, for when I listen to music, that's like the number one thing for me that I didn't feel connected to it, but I was hearing what he had to say.
Like redemption.
And yeah, like, and it's like the whole album is like an oxymoron. It's like gangsters, but I'm praying, but I'm doing bad things, but I'm praying. It's like, but God is hearing me type thing. And it's like, when I saw the album cover, I kind of knew I was gonna like it. Like, Gang Signs and Prayer. I was just like, what is this? Like, I want to hear it. Like, what is that about? But yeah, like I haven't got much to say. That's what I have to say. But I really do like the album. I feel like even like time has passed, like I still go and listen to songs. I don't love every song on the album, but there's some songs that I'm hearing. I'm just like, I love Velvet. Like that song, just the beat of the song's just like soothing. Like I don't know I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, like.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say.
Oh, great. Thank you for that.
I thought you brought up like College Dropout when you were speaking, and that song like Family Business. And when I think of Stormzy, I think of a line in that song where Kanye's talking about his cousin, and he's like, if you said you didn't do it, then you didn't do it. But if you did, it's family business. And when I'm criticizing Stormzy, that's how I feel about it. Like, I don't have a problem with Stormzy. Like, I've seen every time he kind of pops up on your timeline, or like I saw an interview with him on Sky Sports where he's like meeting Gary Neville and stuff. And there's just a familiarity to Stormzy. Like,
You're happy for him.
You're happy for him, but you also feel like, yeah, like you know him, you know? So you don't want to be the person from afar that wants to like tear him down. There's none of that in what I'm saying. I think Stormzy kind of stands on his brand more than his music. Like, he's known for these things outside of music and his appearances and these kind of like viral moments. But I feel like when I try to connect with the music, there's not much to connect with. And to the point where perhaps some of the songs probably shouldn't have made it into the album. Like, I know I like maybe like 100 Bags and like the last track, which is more introspective. That's when I feel like I'm getting to know him. But as far as like a big concept and executing it, I don't, I don't see what everyone else is seeing to make it good, essentially.
So what do you give it out of 5?
I give it a 2.5.
Oh, we're finally on the same page. Liam touched upon an interesting thing as far as Stormzy goes. It feels like brand first and then music second, right? And for that to be the case and for him to like operate in that space, like that must be, indulged by, the UK rap scene as much as, his own kind of pursuit of that, right? So is it a thing where like the standards of like the UK rap scene is quite low, right? To where to where like the focus is on like being lit as opposed to quality of output? And if so, what does that speak to the long-term sustainability of this culture?
I'm going to answer the question, but I'm going to say a point first, yeah?
Go on.
Which is, I feel like we love doing this. Like, what does for us mean? Like, I'm always interested when we say that in music. What does that mean? Like, because the reality is, whether you want to see him as a grime artist or a rapper, he came up in 2014 when grime was having a bit of a renaissance period, as it does like every 5 years. I'm a big grime fan from time, yeah, and we've literally done this with every single artist who we've rated at once upon a time, whether it's Chip, whether at a point it was Skepta. Like, Skepta started making commercial tunes. He was doing transvestites, man them in the sky. Like, we started to cancel Skepta, and then all of a sudden Skepta's cool again. Like, we love to build people up, and then when they're at the top and they go mainstream for white people, we then don't care about them anymore, and we think it's not for us. Like, when Stormzy was doing freestyles on One Extra, everyone was like, nah, this guy's cold. His flow's sick. His cadence is sick. His this is sick. Now all of a sudden we question if he's a good rapper. Like, come on. Like, there's validity in saying, some of his songs might be commercial. Like Kyle said, for me, I haven't really listened to much of his second and third album because the singing is more apparent in the second and third album than it is in the first album. The first album, it was singing, but it weren't singing, it was more talking. Now he's trying to sing, right? And I don't want to hear that. But like, there's a difference between that and questioning whether he's a good rapper, because like he is a good rapper. Let's get real. And in answer to your question about why is he the chosen one, again, I feel like we always do this again, but the reason he's the chosen one probably is for reasons that we might not look to in rap music, which is, for me, clarity. Clarity to me is the number one reason why people go commercial. Same thing's happening, you can argue, with Central C right now. Like clarity in voice, cadence, like you can understand every word. So if you go over the pond to America, they might not be able to vibe with what you're saying, but they can hear you at the very least. Central C is doing that now, right? It's the same thing. And you know, we ask the same questions. Why is Central C going over to America and linking up with Drake? Why is he going #1 in the UK? Why is he doing this? And this is at a time where TikTok rap is way easier to then get commercial success. Stormzy in 2017, the album went #1 and was like the fastest or highest streaming first week album in history. More than views by Drake. So whether or not he's manufactured or not, the numbers don't lie to the reality of him as an artist, right? We like to always put a man down when they go too commercial. And I understand that now, because in his third album, personally, like it's not an album I can even vouch for. And it's where I see the industry bandwagon where anything he releases will probably go #1 now. But he had to get there first. And he got there with an album that had a fucking murderer who's in jail on it, Crazy Titch. And you're talking about making songs for people in Bognor Regis. Like he's got Crazy Titch on the album. He's got Gets on the album talking about being 14 with a shank in a mirror. Yeah, he's got grime beats on there. So Spyro is on there. Real grime legends are on this album producing it, and we're talking about Bognor Regis.
Who's paying you, man?
No, but it's true. And so then when you ask the question about like, you know, the state of the UK music scene, like we've had this conversation before, and I largely agree. I think the UK scene's a bit is in the dumps in a way. Like we do take anything in the UK, right, when it comes to rap. But I don't think you can use this album as a barometer for that.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay. Do you know what? I found what you said quite interesting actually about the clarity of his voice and his cadence, because he actually reminds me, and by no means do I mean like as far as like technical level, but I mean in terms of just like authority on tracks. He reminds me very much of Biggie, right, in terms of presence, but crystal clear. You can hear every single word, and the rhyming schemes aren't too complex. You know, it's very straight to the point. So I agree with you on that point. But I'm by no means saying that Stormzy is a like subpar rapper. I'm not saying that at all. It's just more so a thing where I just don't really connect with him from a musicality standpoint.
And that's fair enough. And I don't think he's the best rapper at the UK scene at all. But like, if you're an artist, is your #1 priority not to be successful? So like when he started with the whole Wicked Skengman thing, and he started realizing that him as a person has virality to it and marketing, of course you're gonna play on it because you want this to be as successful as possible. So like potentially maybe album 2 and album 3, his actual musicality might have taken a little bit of a hit based on that because he knows he can oversell on the marketing. But if you can blend marketing with a bit of talent in the first album, like of course you're gonna do that.
Cool. Nice one. Hayo?
All I remember about the question is it was very biased and leading.
So basically what I was saying is that like, does the UK rap scene place being lit over quality output, right? And like, if so, what does that speak to the long-term sustainability of this culture?
I think it's a fair question.
Discuss.
I think it's a fair question, but against the backdrop of the Stormzy discussion is unfair.
Okay.
I think it's a fair question in isolation, like as a broader kind of investigation or interrogation as to like how the UK interacts with music and music culture. First couple things, like just echoing Undu's thoughts, like I think Stormzy actually expresses how good of an MC he is when he's just freestyling. Like I think when he was going back to back with Wiley, he completely decimated him, and like that was such a confident display of his technical prowess. Again, not to say that he's maybe of the level of a Gets or what have you, but also that those things are very subjective. And then also like the singing thing as well. Like I thought he sang well on the album. Like, like Blinded by Your Grace, banger. Like,
That's a correct conclusion.
but and the thing is, I think one of the comments made was, why is he singing? He doesn't sing well. Those are the same comments made about 50 Cent in the early 2000s, Kanye West singing on 808 and Heartbreaks, and since forever. Kanye West cannot sing at all, but he effectively became a trendsetter for not needing to be able to sing well. And Stormzy's doing it, and we're being critical of him. I just don't really vibe with that. But on that point, I think there's also something to be said about, like, the UK is much smaller than the United States of America, obviously, population-wise. And we're much younger in terms of our relationship with hip-hop, rap, and offshoots, if you would call grime an offshoot of that, or of ragga or jungle, whatever. But in terms of, like, the hip-hop scene, we're very, very young. And so there's not been as much time, I think, for like a variety of appreciations of different rapping styles and kind of subgenres of rap to have really taken themselves. Like I was saying, like 4 or 5 years ago, why is Nux not blown? Like we've been saying it for like, this Nux kid is great. Like, how is the UK not taking this guy in? He's now starting to be, given the appreciation that he deserves. But I think those sorts of things just take time in the UK because we don't have the discerning ear that they've had the time to be able to develop over in the United States. But what I do see though is you get people who are like either really like big fans of like the UK scene, like grime and those kind of like guerrilla, grassroots types of music, and then you get people who are kind of like hip hop snobs. And those are the people that I find disrespect Stormzy because they've spent their whole lives listening to Talib Kweli, and Mos Def, and it's like, I'm not really hearing anything in the lines. And I basically, even without kind of like brushing those kind of people. I'm just kind of being joking anyway, but I think it takes, in the UK, you have to kind of detach yourself from the way you've been educated in American hip hop, which is very sophisticated to the level that it's being taught in university colleges. So when you're listening to hip hop, the spectrum of hip hop allows you to take away, music as poetry as much as music. And if you hear Stormzy rapping, you're not necessarily going to get that poetic sense. And so it's very easy to discard it as, it's just whatever. But I think we need to detach ourselves from that kind of academic view and understand that we can listen to and appreciate and digest various different forms. I love Blade Brown, for example. I love Kojo Funds. But I don't compare Kojo Funds or Blade Brown to the same, like to people like Nas or to even Dave. Like, I can make a very distinct and separate kind of review of the types of music based on what I expect of those artists and in their lanes.
You appreciate them for who they are.
For who they are and for how well they're doing that thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think that's where we get into those murky waters around quality of output and quality of product, is when you start trying to say, oh, well, Nas has got Illmatic.
But you obviously have to draw a line somewhere though, don't you, really?
I think, no.
But sometimes something is just bad.
Yeah. Sometimes something is just bad, but I certainly don't think Stormzy's work falls into that category.
Okay. Okay, cool. No, really appreciate it.
Just wanted to pick up on the point you was making about his brand. Let's be very clear, right? His brand is built on his music. If it wasn't for his music, he wouldn't have that brand. Yeah, you could argue he's standing on it now, but let's be honest, he's earned the right to do that. He's earned the right to get to that position. Yeah, he came up making music that was for both or very commercial, but that's given him a platform to now do stuff specifically for the black community. So we actually need to understand
The strategy.
the strategy behind what he's doing. And I think the gentleman over there made the point about we really want to claim stuff for our culture. I think we've got to kind of get out of that mindset because, yeah, man, we got to let artists just flourish and explore. Like, Stormzy loves music. Like, he really loves music. He loves instruments. He loves different genres. And we don't really appreciate that about him enough. And I've heard a few people kind of say they didn't like his most recent album. I think that's his most authentic album. On the surface, it sounds very commercial. For the first time, I felt like he didn't really care about his audience. And he said, this is just what I want to do. I want to release some soft stuff. I'm going to put the grime in the corner. And prior to releasing that third album, he wrote a letter. He put a letter on his Instagram with the most awful font, by the way. It was hard to read that letter. I was like, yo, man, you're not helping yourself. But when you read that letter, he's just basically saying, like, just let me be. Like, don't stop putting me in a box. I just want to make music. I love music. And just take it for what it is. So 2 points. His brand is built on his music. He's earned the right to have that brand and stand on it, okay, and let that carry him. And secondly, we just got to let him explore different genres, different styles, and stop trying to claim him for a particular box because he doesn't really want to be boxed. He said it himself. He wants to just be free. So
You kind of just said kind of what I wanted to say, so thank you. But I guess I was just going to touch on the fact that someone's musicality is not one-dimensional, and I want to apologize for saying I didn't really like his most recent album because just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not good. And I think Stormzy, you touched on this about he didn't actually come up commercially, I don't think, at all. Like, this was someone who was doing freestyles who, when, you know, the reason why when he did Gang Signs and Prayers, like, in my opinion, one of the reasons why it was so successful is that it was like, wow, this is a genuine grime artist, like maybe kind of new era grime artist that is bringing something to the main stage that is actually still very much in touch with that kind of grassroots genre. And so I completely disagree that what he came up on was commercial. I think, yeah, he did commercial songs, like he has a song with Little Mix, like that's very commercial. But then I think, like, when I was a teenager, like, there were so many different sides to me of music. Like, I was listening to Evanescence and putting eyeliner all over my face. I was screaming na na na, running around Camden. I was rapping, talking the hardest. My grandma made me do homework to Mozart. Like, it's not one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And what I respect about him, even if I don't want to hear his singing all the time, what I respect about him is that he's not afraid to experiment, and people like it. People really like it. It's like, even if I don't particularly love it, it's speaking to people, as many of you said, like, you can resonate with it. And for me, I just salute a mainstream artist who can write a letter begging people to listen to his album because it's not in that box that everyone's put him in.
Yeah.
And to me, I just think if every artist was that brave, you know, we'd have more discussions like this.
I feel like I got cooked earlier. Like, the last 15 minutes has been... I thought I was winning the war, like, earlier when we were quite negative on the album, but clearly not. So just touching on a few bits. Firstly, the For Us element, which seems to be, like, it's in the mud right now. But the point I want to make about that, why I mentioned that earlier, is the fact that I feel like if, off the back of this album, Stormzy released tour dates, I don't think many people in my space, at least, I don't know about you guys, will be running to go and see this in a stadium tour. That's what I mean by saying it's not for us, like, in that sort of space. Gang Size. When that came out, anything since, I didn't run to it. Did anyone go to see that? Oh, did you? Fair. That's how I felt at the time, and, like, I felt that even more so about the two since. In terms of the space and in terms of, like, the rap scene and whatnot, in terms of, like, you mentioned do we care too much about it being lit? I don't think it necessarily has to be lit, but I feel like it has to be somewhat relatable in the sense that I think a good example of what I'm talking about in terms of the for us, but giving them their self and making it more commercial and palatable for a bigger crowd. I think a good example is actually Heady One, in terms of the fact that he is on drill beats. He's saying madness sometimes, but he's very clever about how he goes about it. So you don't actually understand what he's saying. Like he was talking about gymming. It's like, bro, what does that mean? Like, it's about selling drugs, you know what I mean? It's like, it's about the madness, but he's very clever about it. Whereas I feel like this is, when we say manufactured, and it's like, it feels as if the industry said, oh, tell your story about this. It's like, a very obvious way of doing it. Even in this album where you have his mum doing the prayer and stuff, which I feel bad saying this. For me, I didn't believe it. Like, it sounded, I didn't believe it personally. And like, for me, it's like, I even said it to Asha while she was playing. I was like, my mum would have sent it to me on WhatsApp. She wouldn't have said it. The way it came across, even the Crazy Stitch one as well, where he's like, oh yeah, I love that, brother. Like, it doesn't seem like a genuine conversation. It seemed like we want to get this element on the album without it being like, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was in the moment, press record. Like, it felt like, we need you to do this. Mum, send me a prayer quickly. Does that make sense in any way? Yeah. I'm not saying no, but it gives me that feeling of, that's what I'm saying about manufactured, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect. Do you want to continue, or do you want to?
I'm getting cooked regardless, but I'm here. Fight me. But that's how I feel. Like, it gives that feeling where it's like, I've been told to do this. Let me give it to you in this way, and I'm just like.
So you're saying so you just said that his mum's a liar?
No, I'm not saying his mum's a liar. I'm not saying that, but it's like, Mum, send me a prayer right now, and this is what we got. Rather than send me the WhatsApp chainmail. Like, that's the genuine one. Like,
got you.
Not that you could put down an album, but that's what I feel.
Music, like making music is really difficult, and making albums is I'm assuming even more difficult. Like, it's like we keep using this word manufactured with a very like tinged with a lot of negativity, but like in order to construct a body of work that works really well, is cohesive, you can't leave it to chance and leave it to God. You need to put pieces of a puzzle together.
No, I hear it. And one thing I have to say, and I want to make this clear. I don't think it's a bad thing, him doing it. It's the reason why I don't connect to it. So it's not, and I feel like with music a lot of the time, like we try to speak of it in objective terms. It's not like that. It's about how you feel towards it. And I feel like with this album, I appreciate what it does for so many people. But for me, these are the reasons why, these little pockets, these little things, it's like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Got you.
Your question about what's the issue of music being manufactured? I believe all art is made for consumption, right? Otherwise, you just make art in silence by yourself, right? I think it's the extent to which the album feels like he's really playing to the audience. Like, it's the extent, like deliberately putting on a prayer on the album, or kind of asking Crazy Titch, someone really big in grime, to come and validate his credentials as a grime artist. It just felt like, yeah, doing too much, for want of a better expression. But like I said, I feel like he does actually have more authentic albums, particularly the third one. So.
Thank you, Liam.
That was interesting. Like, the art is made for consumption. I feel like that's true in very much like the modern world of music. I also feel like there's an element when you're an artist that you've got kind of something in you that just needs to come out. And then the really beautiful thing about music is that when it comes out, because there's like this connection with everybody else, they connect with it as well. So, like, I don't know, there's a time in your life that you're kind of a emotion that you're going through and you connect with it. So it's a deep thing. Like, music is nothing to play with. So the element of like hip hop snobbery that exists, if you like it does have a place, I think, but not to like the disrespect of the person or the artist kind of thing. It's more, I feel like it's okay to just say where it fits in, to the whole thing. And as part of that potential hip hop snobbery brigade, like, I still listen to Future, when I'm at the gym or something like that. Like, I understand where everything fits, but I don't think we do a Future album necessarily here. It would be interesting, for good and bad reasons. And But we would do a J Hus. In fact, we have. Big Conspiracies, a very, very serious album, you know? And the thing about that thing of connecting
Great
with
album, great album.
Yeah. The thing about connecting with everyone else's kind of humanity or whatever is it's a timeless thing as well. So it's a deep thing. I feel like we can say where it is without tearing him down. We got no interest in tearing him down. Like, we're happy for him. That's why it's say it quietly, like his family business, isn't it? But yeah, I think that element exists. And I feel even though Jordan's question is our question, because like we was thinking about it, even though I'd admit it is a leading question, it's like it is
Still necessary.
It's a question though, isn't it? Like if things blow and you distill, you kind of like sap the something out of it. You know, I don't know what the word is, but that's something that when it's on, you know, like when Jamal Edwards first started SBTV and we're like thinking, raw, like all our guys are like on this YouTube channel now, when before it had no
outlet.
Yeah, no outlet for it. And you're thinking, yeah, like, and you actually rank who's the hardest and like what's the best SBT, all that F64, all that stuff. Like, if once it becomes for everyone, that commentary can't exist anymore. Like, that's a problem for the culture. That's how you actually have a Cardi B being not to single her out, but
the poster child.
that's how you actually get these poster childs that don't, in my opinion, represent the something. That's my point.
I wanted to ask a question for the Stormzy fans. Seems to be over this section. But before Stormzy blew up, was he singing? No, he wasn't. You know what singing is? Oh, was he singing and Stormzy singing? Huh? The reason why I asked that is because, you know, this going back to this whole manufacturing idea of artists, there's a trend within the industry. Like, I don't know if people remember Miss Dynamite, but when Miss Dynamite was blowing up, she was shelling on the mic. It was just straight shelling. It was a grime thing, and it was shelling. The moment she got signed, it was, we're forcing you to now sing. And this was like a common trend amongst a lot of, you know, artists that came from the culture. They blew up doing their authentic music, and then when they got to the label forced them to sing. This is how we got Miss Dynamite and all that kind of stuff. It's a banger, but it's not all of that. All of the album and the singing was not what she was doing before. So the reason why I say that and I asked that about Stormzy, if he wasn't singing before he so-called blew up, is the singing manufactured?
Like, I think those things, there are a variety of reasons as to why that may be the case that I obviously can't legislate for because I don't know Stormzy. But like, you also have to take into consideration the context of like life stages. Like, before Stormzy was famous, he was on the roads. Like, he was rapping with Clifton Bloodline and Croydon on freestyle videos. You're not going to be singing on freestyle videos when there's bare man them back behind you smoking weed and carrying weapons. Like, that's not the lick at 16, 17, 18 years old. His life changes when he starts to take music seriously as a career path. And that's when you'd imagine the dexterity and the horizon broadening starts to take place, when it's like, I want to be a music artist. I don't want to be like on South Norwood High Street spitting bars anymore. I want to make music. And Stormzy speaks about that very eloquently in that post that Rose dialogued about, and yourself, where he talks about, I love music. Like, I grew up listening to people that you would be surprised that I listened, that you'll be very shocked that to hear that I listened to. But obviously there's a bravado about youth. You know, there's a bravado and a braggadocious nature about being a teenager amongst a particular group of friends. It's not cool to sing, and it doesn't pay to sing at that time. But it might be intrinsically in him to want to get that out at some point. We all have to overcome those hurdles in life of things that you're probably a little bit shy to do at a certain stage, that inwardly you'll be like, actually, it'll be fucking cool if I painted or played the piano or so. I'm sure Dave probably went through all of this shit as well in school, probably being seen as some little nerd going to his, teaching himself how to play the piano, but you get to a position in life where your friends are like, do you know what? We were the stupid ones. Do your thing.
Yeah.
And that's how I would see. I mean, that's just one potential way of seeing it, but I don't think that is a stick to beat Stormzy with, because there are various different artists whose artistry grows as they seek to become recognized as credible in their craft. And I think that's certainly what Stormzy wants to do.
Cool, great. Thank you. Can we come to this gentleman here, please?
No, I was going to say, I think the challenge there is that whilst artists want to grow and develop into something new, their core fan base doesn't want them to do that. So, like, for example, Stormzy jumping on singing, like, his core fan base don't want him to do that. They probably want him to stick on either heavy grime beats or move into drill or something like that. Same way J Hus came up in 2014, 2015 singing. And so we're used to him singing. So now we're like, yeah, J Hus, we know he's singing and stuff. Like, you mentioned Heady One. Heady One had an album with Fred again. People were saying Fred never again. Do you know what I mean? because it was out of his box. It was different. So I just think like, obviously the artist needs to put stuff out that's good, but at the same time, I think maybe as an audience we need to be more open to new and different things from them, because I think as soon as Heady One sort of got the feedback, I feel like he's never tried that again. Do you know what I mean? And I remember Quangface had an alter ego called Nasty. He brought out a song, everyone hated it. He's never done it again. But it's like, how as an artist can you grow and develop and move into new avenues and really explore your craft if, you know what I mean, your fan base is kind of being like, nah, stick in your box.
Yeah, really, really good point. Do you want to go?
I like that question, and I can understand why, you know, him now singing makes his music feel commercial. But just going back to that point, he's grown up in church, right? He hears a lot of singing in church. He even says in one of the songs something about Adele. He was, you know, and I feel like a lot of artists really want to be able to express the full range of their interests, right? And he's got to a point now where he feels maybe financially comfortable, where he can do that. He can just be himself a little bit more now. So I don't think it's him being less authentic. I actually think it's him being more authentic, and that he's just expressing himself more. And I feel like more artists need to do that. And you see some artists, the way they do it is with samples. So they might have grown up listening to soul in the house or jazz, and then their music changes and they might start changing the samples and stuff. He said, no, I grew up listening to singing in church, maybe like in Adele. I'm on a level now. I'm going to just sing my heart out. And I think we got to rate that, man. You know, we've got to remember artists, they're in a tricky position. They've got other people to please who have expectations of them. And they also want to honor themselves, to thine own self be true. I think that's the saying. So I feel like Stormzy is caught in that position. We have expectations of him, but he also has expectations of himself. And I'll go back to that letter. That letter, please don't sleep on that letter he released before his last album. He was really saying something in that letter. He was really saying, please, man, just let me be me, man. Like, I've never seen an artist do that before, you know? So I don't think the singing makes him less authentic. I actually think it makes him more authentic. And we've seen how Heady One, I don't know if Heady One's had a grown-up singing. It'll be interesting to know if Heady One was in the bathroom singing in the mirror or something like that.
So, like, as a torchbearer of UK grime and rap, is anyone here like disappointed that Stormzy didn't clash with Chip?
I am very disappointed, and I feel like I like Stormzy. He's like one of us. He's like family. All right, we got that out of the way. Like, I felt like it goes back to this inauthenticity thing, right? You knew you could share Wiley because Wiley's not really a bars man like that. But when it came to Chip, you didn't clash him, but you keep subbing him on tracks without clashing him. But then you kind of pretend like I don't have to clash him because I'm Big Mike and I've got the money and I'm famous and you're too small for like. To me, that's inauthentic again. Like, if you're Shellers, then Shell. Like, this is what you do on your mic. You do your skippity flow or whatever it is. And this is your thing that you're known for. But when man comes to test you, you know, who's top in the game, who's rated on those things, you don't do it. But to me, it's just, it goes to character again. Even the whole pulling up to Chip's house and all, it's like, it goes back to the AJ thing. When AJ had his breakdown on his last fight, people were like, no, it's real. It's like, people were like, is this authentic AJ? Which one is the real him? I feel like Big Mike's pulling up to Chip's house is the similar thing to AJ's breakdown. It's like, you're pretending to be, I'm this prayer, Lord, but then you're pulling up and trying to ride out on man and thing. And like, but there's but there's still like an inauthenticity about it and who he presents himself to be. Like, again, even with the whole Chip thing, it's like, if you're gonna clash him, or stop subbing him. Don't sub him and pretend like I can clash him, but I'm not gonna, like, all that whole thing is inauthentic to me.
Do you remember the video of Kano and Wiley clashing, and they're on like these stairs? Yeah. Like, I don't feel that passionately about him not clashing or clashing Chip. All I can say though is that image in my mind of when them two are clashing next to each other is the roots of this whole thing, and it does say something if it gets to that rarefied air and that's lost. Do you see what I mean? So I don't care that much, but it says something, innit?
But that he's not cut from the cloth.
That's putting words in my mouth.
I think I'm kind of similar to Liam on that. I don't really care necessarily about the beef itself, but I'm more, it's kind of the point I wanted to make before, but the wine must have touched me, so I didn't actually get to it. But it's the fact that with Stormzy, after Shut Up, for me, in my opinion, he becomes a pop star. And when I'm talking about doing stuff for us, I want you to be kind of like, this is just me, by the way. This is not objective. Whereby you are pop, I want you to do what you were doing before, but just give that to everybody in a way where you control the space, you control the kind of industry, you control the whatever it is, and just give that to everyone. So in a sense where him and Chip are going back at each other, whatever, and he didn't really step up to the mantle, it's like that could have been a moment where everyone gets to see what it's like in our space. So it's not that I care that much about the beef per se, but it's like, big man, just do it. So like this thing blows kind of thing. If that makes any sense whatsoever. It might not.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
That's a problem for me because he's calling himself the king of grime. He's got Crazy Titch co-signing him. I just felt like there was more legs in that beef, and it just fizzled out because he didn't want to respond, and he didn't even come out and say why. Like, at least with Drake and Pusha T, I think Drake just said Pusha T just took it too far, and if I he just said Drake was real. Drake said if I was going to respond, I was going to go real low. Drake said I was going to take this to another level, whether he would or not. But Stormzy just went silent, and then he's still kind of subbing Chip. I'm just like, if you're calling yourself the king of grime, you've come up with grime, you're getting co-signed by Titch. Like, you're gone, Stormzy. You can afford to do that, jump in the trenches and then jump back into your other space. I just feel like he let the culture down a little bit there. Sounds odd because I was just saying, why are we saying he's just for us? But yeah, in that particular moment, I wanted him to be for the culture. I needed you to get on that mic again, man. But he didn't.
That's like, obviously as fans, I think we're all disappointed it didn't happen, innit? But what does Stormzy stand to gain? Like, Chip will see you release at 10 p.m. and will have made a response by 12 at midnight. If I'm still like,
I don't.
For someone in Stormzy's position, what are you gonna gain by it's Chip wins. Regardless of what happens, Chip wins because Chip will do. What did he do with Young Hat Trick? He'll do like 3 videos in 3 hours. This brother that he's got, his friend from Tottenham or whatever, that shoots his videos for him, they're rolling. He got him on. He's probably editing videos whilst Chips.
But doesn't that?
They're set up. It doesn't. I'm not taking that risk because at Stormzy's level, Stormzy's thinking, nah, I've got big brands. I've got this thing coming up with Cambridge Uni. Got this thing. Like, I'm not going to war with someone who's got nothing to lose right now. Nah, come on, man. I appreciate why Stormzy didn't respond.
again, we're making excuses for Stormzy. Him as a person versus him as a music. Again, he's not doing the thing he's supposed to do in music because he's got the brands and he's got, like, Chip ain't got brands. Chip is a big Chip ain't no small time guy either. If you're the king of grime, then you're supposed to do grime things.
Daniel, you want to clash him, innit? You want to clash him.
To be honest, I kind of took some of the words out of my
go,
mouth
go.
though, because I was gonna say, you know, like it's at the point. This is where the brand takes over. You know,
Is
this
he big?
where
Is he bigger than Graham?
Who?
Stormzy.
yeah, this guy. I think we underplay like the success of this individual. You know, like we've not seen anything like this before. Like he is a multi-millionaire who's on the young person's rich list. Like that doesn't happen regularly, yeah, from someone who makes, in my opinion, what is the first one, a grime album. Like, so this is where the brand takes over. This is where his PR and his you know, disaster specialist team start to have a word in his ear and say, bro, like, you could do this and you could earn a bit of credibility, but nah, not this time. But going back to your point, he's already shown us with Wiley though.
Yeah.
And why do we keep forgetting it? No.
Flogging a dead horse.
It's not about people don't rate Wiley like that. He fucking destroyed Wiley. Like this is the godfather of grime. And he literally came in and fucked him up. Like so we like to disregard that, because when it comes, you know, you have to know you have to know and pick your battles. Like that's you have to in life. You pick your battles. If you are walking in the street with your other half and you bump into someone and they're 4'5", you think you're gonna beat them up. If they're 7 foot, you're gonna ask yourself questions. It's the same thing. You have to pick your battles. Yeah, but but look, ultimately, music is bravado. Like, you go into clashes anyway, thinking you can kill anyone, even if you're not that good. Like, that's what you have to do. It's a whole bravado game. If you watch Lord of the Mics, look at when Margar punched what was my man's name in Lord of the Mics, because he was going on and on and on about his goal, and he lost it. Like, it's the whole thing is ridiculous, heightened masculine energy. Yeah, so you have to know you're gonna go into something and think, I need to know that I'm gonna win this thing. And if you have questions about it, then you're gonna make considered decisions at a point in your career where you're at. It's literal like disaster like management. That's like what it is.
I understand that. It's the bigger picture you're saying. Idris?
I'm co-signing you on that one, because when we had a chat before, I did say if Stormzy was to beef Chip right now, yes, the purists will be very happy, but long term, it does not serve him. Chip is going to get more sales, Chip is going to get more credibility, and Chip is going to be the overall winner of this whole thing. Whereas Stormzy, having already defeated a giant, you can just be like, I'm not on this thing right now. And he kind of proved his point, because when he came back, he kind of opened a whole new horizon for the scene. That sense of we can waste our energy and time in trying to like show who's the stronger, who's the better lyricist, and do that in a self-destructive manner. Or we can work together collaboratively and build a culture that will outlast us and our children. And I feel like the mindset that Stormzy is at or is operating at would be compatible with beefing with Chip, because Chip is in the mindset of, I'm in the trenches. It's if I beef you, it's that sense of they can only be one man. Stormzy is like, I'm friend with J-Hus, I'm friend with Dave, I'm friend with Getz, I'm friend with all of these big other names. We can all eat together, and there's no need for us to engage in this trivial, ego-driven thing. Even though in his heart he still feels like he's the best, but there's no need for that to be on display, because that's been used and it ended in a very terrible manner in different culture. Even in the UK, like that sense of, because two people are beefing, is now like bad energy, and it fucks up businesses and all of that kind of. And I feel like for Chip, there can only be an uphill from there. For Stormzy, not so much. And I feel like brand-wise, like you mentioned, it makes no sense for him to go and beef Chip in North London.
I feel like we're really
we'll
exaggerating.
round up here.
I feel like we're really exaggerating the potential consequences. This ain't no Biggie or Pac. No one's gonna die. Like, for real, people are saying, what's he gonna gain? What's he gonna lose? Like, think about Drake, yeah, call him soft or whatever. He will get dirty. Like, he will go in the trenches and then go and sell a crazy album after. Like, Stormzy could have done this and still been
Stormzy.
What damage to his brand would he have got from Clash and Chip?
Nah, I'm not having it. The reason why I'm not having it is because the reason why I'm not having it is because when it comes to Wiley, it's not about brand. It's not about I snatch your mum's weave off your head, and it's not about brand. It wasn't about brand. But when it comes to Chip, all of a sudden now it's brand. It's nah. And the thing is, your whole album is shelling about, go on, if you're a bad boy, do it. But where's the bad boy do it when Chip turns up? It's the same thing. And you're not acting like Stormzy didn't pull up to Chip's side. Chip didn't pull up to Stormzy. Stormzy pull up to Chip. So all of this, my brand is too big. I'm too big to be doing this. I'm too big to be in the trenches. When were you too big when you pulled up to my man's house? To me, you guys are making excuses.
Did you know what?
You're making excuses for Stormzy not doing what he's supposed to do.
Did you not? Did you know what? I think we'll leave it. I think you'll leave it there. I think we'll leave it there. Oh man, that was actually really fun. Thank you all for coming out today. We put a lot of effort into kind of like putting these things, on, and we really hope that you take something away and enjoy the discussions. Before we round up though, I just want to kind of like give some thanks to people on the team and who help out. So if you can just kind of like give a quick round of applause to Liam. If you can give a quick shout out to Daniel as well. I know he's been controversial, but give a round of applause to Luke. Cool, great. And if you can all just like give a round of applause for each other. And thank you. We do this. We try to do this once a month. To just kind of like keep the community going and keep the energy high. So watch out for our next event. I don't know. We don't know which one we're gonna do yet, do we? But we'll keep you lot posted anyway. But yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, and see you next time.